He wore the smile of a man who conquered every stage, but carried the silence of a brother who couldn't save the one voice he loved most. Barry Gibb gave the world an eternal falsetto and 1,000 melodies. Yet in the shadows of the spotlight, he kept a single question locked in his chest. If love is loud enough to fill arenas, why wasn't it loud enough to pull Andy back from the edge? And if the Bee Gees were a miracle, what did it cost the last man standing to keep that miracle alive? He began as Barry Allen Crompton Gibb, a boy from Douglas, on the Isle of Man with wind-swept hair and a pocket full of borrowed chords. The family didn't have much, but they had each other, and in that house music wasn't a luxury, it was a language. He could hum harmony the way other kids whistled, could hear possibility in the clatter of dishes, could feel rhythm thrumming under his own skin. In the evenings, while the world exhaled, he'd lean into his brothers Robin and Maurice and invent a sound that felt like a promise. Who could have guessed that the promise would one day lift cities off their feet and also break a heart in a way no audience could see? The moves came early and often, from Britain to Australia, from schoolyards to cheap halls, from shy talent to undeniable presence. The three brothers learned survival first and stardom second. They sang on radio shows no one recorded, and in rooms where the echo did most of the clapping. But the spark was there, a blend so tight it felt like it came from one throat, not three. Barry stood a step forward, not by force but by gravity, guiding melody lines like a captain steering through fog. Success wasn't inevitable. It was earned on nights when the microphone smelled like dust and hope. Then doors opened. The Bee Gees found their way back to England and into studios, where the walls remembered history. The 1960s made room for their harmonies, first as aching pop, then as something sleeker and braver. Barry's pen turned sentiments into standards. His falsetto, a bright, longing ember, floated above arrangements like a secret only he could hold. Songs traveled faster than fame, and soon the brothers were everywhere, their sound slipping into car radios, jukeboxes, living rooms, hearts. But what fans didn't see was the darkness waiting behind the spotlight. The 1970s were a detonation. One soundtrack changed everything. Saturday nights stopped being nights, they became a fever. And Barry wrote the temperature, Stayin' Alive, Night Fever, How Deep Is Your Love? They weren't just songs, they were invitations to feel immortal for 4 minutes at a time. Clubs turned into congregations. The Bee Gees were the sermon. Barry's falsetto cut through cigarette fog and mirror balls like a flare. His brothers wrapped their voices around his and caught fire. Fame doesn't walk, it rushes, and it rushed them so hard it nearly knocked them off their feet. They weren't just singers, they became architects of an era. And when the phone rang, it wasn't only for Bee Gees records, it was for the Barry Gibb songbook. Barbra Streisand wanted a universe. He built her one. Dolly Parton and Kenny Rogers wanted a duet. He gave them a lifelong echo. Diana Ross, Dionne Warwick. The list grew longer than any chart. Barry learned the quiet joy of giving someone else a hit, and the private ache of watching the world claim the song as theirs. He didn't mind. The work mattered more than the credit, and the family mattered most of all, or so he believed, until the family began to fracture in ways music couldn't fix. Because while the world shouted for the Bee Gees, another Gibb was learning to run faster than his years, faster than his defenses. Andy was the baby, the smile you couldn't resist, the voice that felt like summer at first note. Barry saw it before anyone, the purity, the ease, the ability to make a chorus feel like it had always been living in your chest. He didn't keep that gift for himself. He fed it. He wrote with Andy, produced for Andy, poured his creative fuel into the youngest brother, as if he could outrun every storm by giving him more light. But storms don't bargain. And fame is a sea that pulls hardest at the swimmers who don't yet know their limits. Andy's rise was not a climb, it was a launch. I just want to be your everything, shadow dancing. The world fell in love with him the way flowers turn toward the sun without thinking. He was 20, then 21, then 22, and suddenly he was a headline, a heartthrob, a phenomenon. He had the stagecraft, the sweetness, the grin that apologized and dared in the same breath. Barry watched with pride and a fear he couldn't quite name, because he recognized the look in Andy's eyes, the hunger to be adored in the hollow that applause never fills. Behind the curtain, the truth was far darker. The schedules blurred, the parties arrived. The weightless feeling of being wanted everywhere began to feel like falling. Andy was too open, too generous, too unarmored. He needed guardrails. He found temptations. He needed rest. He found accelerants. He needed a brother. He found an industry. Barry stepped in, then stepped back, then stepped in again, trying every stance love can take. Producer, mentor, confessor, cop, cheerleader, until the roles tangled like headphone wires. He told himself it was a rough patch, a phase, a storm. But storms don't knock once, they hammer. Meanwhile, the rest of Barry's life refused to pause. He had work, always. The studio never truly sleeps. And at home, he had something the stage could never give. Linda. They had met like a scene written by fate. Top of the pops, a glance that lasted longer than the camera shot, a conversation that never really ended. Marrying her felt like opening a door to a room he hadn't known he needed. She steadied him when the world spun, teased him when he brooded, gave him 5 children and a map back to himself. In a business that breaks vows for sport, theirs held, not because life was easy but because they refused to let each other go in the hard. But family joy and family fear can live in the same house without touching. Barry would hold a newborn in one arm and a worry he couldn't name in the other. Success blazed, and so did scrutiny. Disco's backlash arrived like winter after a false spring. The Bee Gees, once kings, became targets for a cultural tantrum. The brothers hadn't caused. Barry swallowed pride and kept writing. He knew songs outlast trends, the way truth outlasts noise. Still, he watched the public try to exile the sound they'd once worshipped and wondered what that kind of whiplash would do to a soul as young as Andy's. And this was only the beginning of the heartbreak. Because when a young star stumbles, the fall is never quiet. Andy's voice could still stop a room, but the rooms began to blur. He missed cues. He missed rehearsals. He missed the version of himself he was trying to impersonate. He wanted to be the man in the poster. He woke up the boy in the mirror. He promised he would slow down. He promised he would show up. He promised and meant it until the next wave hit. Barry tried tough love. He tried soft love. He tried the hardest love of all. Letting someone you adore learn a lesson you would bleed to teach them yourself. The phone call you dread as an older brother doesn't come with strings and bells. It comes with a voice that shakes. Andy, 30 years old, 5 days past a birthday that should have felt like a threshold, was gone. No grand goodbye, no last studio trick, no encore. A heart too tired, a life too sped up, a beautiful boy who ran out of road. Barry did not break in a headline. He broke in private, in the rooms where his brother's laughter once bounced off the walls. The Bee Gees had a way of turning silence into music. Now the silence turned them into men who had to keep breathing without the person who made the air feel brighter. Grief rearranges you. It doesn't ask permission. Barry stood on stages that felt suddenly bigger and colder. He sang harmonies that used to hold 3 and felt the missing 4th hovering at the edge of the room like a light. You can't switch on. He vowed not to let the world turn Andy into a cautionary tale, even as he acknowledged the truth. Fame can be a carnival and a crucible, and some hearts are too tender to pay the toll. In interviews he chose grace over gossip, memory over morbid detail. He kept a space in his show for Andy, a line in his voice, a story in his eyes. It seemed like everything was lost until one moment changed everything. The moment wasn't a hit or an award, it was a decision. Barry would keep the music alive, not as a monument, but as a living thing, a bridge between what had been and what could still be. He wrote and produced with the same ferocity, not to outrun sorrow, but to master it. He said yes to projects that felt like home, and no to anything that felt like pretending. When the Bee Gees sang again, they sang as men who knew time was a thief and art a witness. And when the surviving trio dwindled to one, he learned what it means to carry a legacy without letting it crush you. He found unexpected companionships, too. Friends who understood the oxygen level of fame, who knew how the air thins on mountaintops. In quiet kitchens far from camera flashes, he traded stories with icons, who became simply people around his table. He laughed at the absurdities, raised a glass to the miracles, and admitted the fears that never fully leave. He planned big-hearted gestures, like restoring a house where legends once wrote their truths. And when flames took that plan from him, he stood among ashes and chose to build again, because building is what survivors do. Barry's marriage became the spine of his later chapters. Linda was there at every pivot, a hand at the back when standing tall seemed impossible. Their children grew, found their own music, their own lives, and he learned the gentle art of being present without orchestrating. He became a grandfather whose voice, once a neon blaze, softened into lullabies. In 2009, he stitched his two homes into one citizenship and smiled at the idea that he belonged to both islands now, the one of birth and the one of reinvention. And yet, for all the forward motion, memory never stopped tapping his shoulder. Some nights he returned to the beginning. Two brothers in a room too small for their dreams. To a kid named Andy whose laugh arrived a second before his body. He could still hear the demo takes where Andy's joy made the microphone blush. Could still feel the jolt of pride when the baby brother eclipsed the sky. He could still revisit the argument they had near the end and wish on 1,000 stars that he'd said something kinder, longer, more saving. But wishes are not time machines, so he turned them into songs. If Barry's rock bottom was the day the phone call came, his redemption was every day after that he chose to sing. He kept touring not out of habit, but out of duty, the good kind. The kind that binds you to the people who found themselves in your work and trusted you to keep showing up. He learned to talk about loss without letting it devour the living. He spoke of Andy not as a warning but as a wonder, a bright, complicated, beautiful soul who deserved more time and got less, who made the world warmer while he was here. He made sure the music did for others what he once tried to do alone for his brother. Hold them up when gravity pulled too hard. Legacy can be a statue or a seed. Barry chose seed. He allowed the catalog to breathe in new voices, new arrangements, new generations, discovering the thrill of that first chord. He smiled when teenagers danced to a song older than their parents, because that's what songs are supposed to do, skip across decades like stones on water. He accepted honors with humility and brought his brothers into the room with him every time. He treated applause like weather, welcome when it came, survived when it stormed, never confused with the climate of his worth. He is not simply the last Gibb brother on a stage. He is a living archive, a guardian of a sound that once told the entire world to move. He is a husband who stayed, a father who listened, a writer who never hoarded the good ideas, a friend who knows how to say me too when the masks come off. And in the rare, unguarded moments when he speaks about Andy, you hear something holier than gossip, a love that refused to turn bitterness into biography. He didn't save his brother, he saved his brother's place at the table. Sometimes, that is the only honest miracle. They didn't just sing to us, they stitched our memories together and gave them a chorus. The Bee Gees taught Saturday nights how to glow and taught Sunday mornings how to grieve. Barry Gibb's truth about Andy is not a scandal, it's a benediction, a reminder that brilliance and fragility often share the same heartbeat, and that the bravest thing an artist can do is keep telling the truth when the music stops. They didn't just play heroes on stage. They lived the cost of it in real life. What part of their story shocked you the most? The meteoric rise, the hidden battles, or the love that survived the silence? And if you thought this story was powerful, wait until you see what happened to another voice of a generation who outran fame until the night it finally caught up. ChatGPT said,